So anyway, my presentation is about integration of digital matte painting in film, which means mostly digital matte painting, but I will talk about the history of it also. So what is DMP and how does it work? DMP stands for digital matte painting, and its predecessor was matte painting, just matte painting, which is the process of creation of realistic or imaginary set, either part or in whole of the image. It divides into the traditional form and the digital form. I will get to it in a second. And it combines a painting or perhaps pastel painting or other forms of art into a live action film or whatever, live action sequence. And it creates an illusion of a setting. It's for numerous reasons, but for example, if the shooting on the set is too expensive or it's too inconvenient for the production, well, for example, the space does not fit the whole crew, or it's too expensive or too inconvenient to travel, I don't know, 200 miles or 2000 miles to the place where they need to shoot the set. Or maybe there is, I don't know, there isn't a road to get to the set or to the place, then matte painters are called to create the set artificially and to add the setting or extend the setting to the film set later in the post-production. The basic principle of matte painting is that part of the scene is masked off, which you can see on the right side in the image, which is from the classic Indiana Jones movie with the storage of artifacts, in which most of the shot is painted. It was an original painting, and only a part, a small part, where the car went through was left blank, so that this small part of the image was shot real, and other parts were painting. That's because it was masked off. It either uses black material to cover the whole with pure black, so when we shoot film, we don't get to see any reflection or anything on the glass, which I will talk about soon. Or in the modern era, the green screens or blue screens, or perhaps digital cropping is used to cover or delete or mask some part of the screen of the image, to put matte painting instead. Most matte paintings are digital and then digitally composited. But the original technique was to paint a photorealistic or close to photorealistic scene on a glass of sheet, or sheet of glass, sorry, either with paint or pastels. You can see Chris Evans, one of the first and most famous matte painters, in his work on Star Wars, in which he used the class plane to paint stormtroopers into a giant hall, so that the production didn't need to use 400 extras. Anyway, he left a portion of the screen blank, so that the live action shot would be inserted. He started with the original painting, but later he transitioned into the digital era. And the first step during this process was to put a black covering behind the holes. So there was a shot that was set, the camera was on tripod, everything was prepared, and the director, together with matte painter, decided where the extras and the actors and the whole scene would be set, and other parts would be covered in black, so that no light would go into film or the camera. So later it could be exposed again, and this time it was inverted with only the part of the image where set was to be covered with black, and other parts would be uncovered, and instead there would be the painting, which, for example, this what he did in with the stormtroopers. So the point was to use really stationary cameras, so the camera wouldn't move. They even stabilized the tripod with with it buried in the ground, so it wouldn't move. And most of the time, the paintings were finished live on set, so that they would cover the marks or edges around the real set, so it would be or it would seem invisible. So this is what it looked like in the end. So you can see they purposely left a huge blank spot. Well, it's black on black ground, so it doesn't show that much, but you can see the edges sometimes. And so they used just few people normally, and others were painted. And you can see, or maybe you can see, more the more far they are, the less detailed they are painted. So here you can almost see only the dots in instead of a normal person, like here, really detailed. So that's the art of matte painting. It is one of the oldest film techniques. They mostly painted backgrounds because backgrounds didn't require such level of detail, and they didn't move as much. At the start, they didn't move at all. Well, when the shot required matte painting, it was required to be stationary at all times. But later they invented ways to incorporate a small movement. But most of the times it was just stationary, and it was just backgrounds, uh, and it was just a way to extend sets most of the time. It originated as a photography technique, actually. It was used to retouch, for example, old buildings. It first came as a way to photograph buildings for real estate agents, so that they would paint out the ugly walls and broken whatever stuff was broken on the building, and they would shoot it and um, paint out the destroyed stuff on a glass pane in front of camera. So it was just a historical Photoshop. So then later it transitioned into film as well. It was used in the film industry since like the late 19th century, and some of the famous films in history use them to create fantastical worlds as well, not only for retouching or set extension, but most of the time it was used in Wizards of Oz, The Birds, original Star Wars films, Mary Poppins, Titanic, Indiana Jones, and so on. All of these used fantastical worlds that couldn't be filmed normally, but it was not only for the fantastical worlds. It was, like I said, for the set extension and so on. Yeah, those films all use the actual paintings on glass to create the illusions. But the first one who came up with this idea, or predecessor of this idea, was Georges Méliès. After inventing the technique of masking a film, he used it to paint a part of a building or in front, part of a wall, sorry, in front of a camera. It was similar to matte painting used later, but he invented the technique of double exposure, which gave birth to the possibility to make matte paints. Matte painters had to be skilled and create perfect photorealistic paintings, even when the painting itself was from fantasy or sci-fi world, or it was imaginary completely, with elements out of this world. The lighting had to match, the weather had to match, and they had to capture it in such a short time, because when you are shooting on set, you are there whole day. So matte painters had to capture the exact moment the shot was made and paint it, I don't know, for 2 weeks later. But they still had to keep the weather and the position of the sun from the time the shot was made. So it took a lot of skill. So, for example, you can see this is another shot from Star Wars. I love Star Wars, you know. So this was from Star Wars. There was the part of the set which was the sandy ground and part of a wall created, and of course our actors, but other parts were painted in. You can see it was just the majority of the image was painted, which is amazing, and the image quality, the level of detail is amazing for that age in film, which was still early for matte painting. And even before that, you can see Mission of Cleopatra film, which was painted too, and it was used to create massive crowds and a large city behind the set. You can, again, as a background, which couldn't be created normally. So the filmmakers use this to make their lives easier, and they still do. And as I said, the first one to come up with some sort of an idea for matte painting was George Méliès, but the first one who actually did it was Norman O'Dowd. And he's considered to be the first one to come up with this idea to edit the film with the painting on glass. As I said, it was originally done in photography, and it was Mr. Dawn that was the photographer of real estate, and he used it to retouch the buildings. And first movie where this technique was used was Missions of California, which was to repair all destroyed buildings and extend the scenes with roofs and bell towers. The painting process was troublesome at start because it took a lot of time to set the painting, because matte painter had to use you look through camera, and his assistant would put marks on the glass as starting point, and then they would start painting, and the weather would change, the sun would change. So they had to account for all those changes. But later, Dawn came up with the idea to shoot the scene first and black out the spots that needed the matte painting, and develop few stills from the movie and project them onto the glass, and then they could paint the matte painting later, and the lighting wouldn't change. Later, they created back projection with this idea, and miniatures were enriched with this also. And here is a small diagram or small image of how it worked. So you see the real set was broken poles and rubbish in front of a building, but the director wanted a fountain and some trees in the foreground. So a glass pane was used in front of the set to create this well, in this instance a foreground, but other times it was stuff in the background. So at the end, it could be like this. It could be painted on set and filmed right there, but other times it would be just blacked out, masked off, and painted later. So there were two techniques to this. Well, then there is the modern matte painting, which evolved later during later Star Wars and stuff. And it was inserting live action shots onto a painted fictional world, and it's still used every day, even today. It didn't die, and it's more alive than ever. The matte painting world is still growing, and it's growing easier to create some kind of cool dynamic shot with Unreal world, with fantasy world. Um, Matte painters are often called environment artists or set extension artists or concept artists, and it's because they are really versatile, and most of the time nowadays they use even 3D programs, and well, with the evolution of Unreal Engine, they can use this to create the worlds that need to be created. So yeah, it's a giant part of the industry being a matte painter. And the first ever digital matte painting was created by Chris Evans, which he did the Star Wars I showed earlier, and he did it in Young Sherlock Holmes in 1985. And he scanned a photographic image and layered it with digital drawing to create the scene. So it was, well, the first digital matte painting ever. He did a lot of paintings in Star Wars, including the spaceship. And well, the digital matte painting is still relevant, and I allowed myself to borrow a shot from amazing matte painter Steve Corman, who did a cinematic trailer for Star Atlas, which I really adore because this is essentially what matte painting should look like, which is everything in this shot is made from matte painting. It's just the technique used, which I will cover in a minute, were digital, so it would be easier to create this kind of shot with matte painting because you can do layers and layers of different matte paintings, and just in 3D program you can just layer them, and you can have even the parallax and continue with your work with that, and you don't even need to be live on set or create something purely in 3D and animate the camera. You can all do it in compositing with matte painting later. Yep. Sometimes even pastel drawings or actual paintings are still used even to this day, or used as a concept references, or used as a base to be later scanned into computer and then digitally altered and created layers with them, and then finally creating the final setting. Most common types of matte painting are set extensions or painting a new sky to the shot, because most of the time the director doesn't get the weather he wants. So there is a lot of shots that are just created just to replace the sky, and that's the job for matte painters. Modern matte painters use a variety of digital painting techniques to create the digital matte paintings. For example, scanning photographs they took themselves, images of handmade artwork, or collaging images, oftentimes called photo bashing, which is a really cool technique of just layering tons and tons of images and then just masking them in between, and creating scenes and objects that wouldn't be able to you wouldn't be able to paint them. You just need the level of detail from photos So photo bashing is a great technique for matte painters to create realistic scenes and settings. Or they can, of course, use pure digital painting, but it's really time consuming. Also, sometimes those matte paintings are turned into actual canvas and are used in films as backgrounds or backdrops. This was used in Harry Potter films, where they printed large 100 inches canvases and stitched them together and created the background. So there is a lot of variety what you can do with matte paintings. You can create new sky, you can create larger cities, you can create mountains, deserts in the background, you can destroy cities that are shot live, completely fine and crystal clear, everything. But with matte painting, everything is possible. So it has a lot of ways to use this. And well, with this, I will show you some of my work with matte painting. It's not much, but I try, I learn. And this is the shot you saw earlier when Mr. Labik showed it, but it's from my bachelor's degree film, and we used matte painting or digital set extension to create this set behind our actor and the front table, which the shot looks like this. It's just static, but we had some in motion too. And the point was to create, we didn't have money or enough room to create this kind of a lab. So we just created it with, oops, where am I? No, that's not it. There is. Yes. We created with the front table with the aquarium, and just put a green screen behind our actor and did the set extension with matte painting after it. The process was that my colleague Maros Seidman did a 3D model of what the scene could look like, and we then went through a lot of back and forth with how it should look like, how the interior should evolve, and what everything should be there. So that's one part of matte painting too. There is a lot of versions, a lot of progress, a lot of feedbacking back and forth until you end with results you are content with, even though here you cannot see the city behind. That was my job to add later in compositing, but we had some sort of city like this behind the windows, also with replacing the sky. So yeah, there was layers of sky, layers of the city, and layer of matte painting behind our actor. So you can create a set extension and also create sky replacement and so on and so forth. The digital matte painting part is exciting. With you can create it with almost everything. The sky is a photograph, slightly edited. The laboratory is just a 3D, purely 3D made, but altered in a few ways in compositing, and then the image comes together, even though it's not everything is used. Not matte painting is not used for everything, but you can create everything with matte painting. That's what I was trying to say. My other shot I did was this kind of a city sci-fi shot with a spaceship flying through it, and here you can see you can see the original image was a drone shot flying through. I think this was Vancouver, and I added. Let me just do this. I added the sky with photograph, but you can see I painted out the mountains and kind of extended the sky. Then I graded the original plate back with just grading to match the sky. And then I added back the original buildings, but those were rotoscoped to be in 3D, so that later I could add fog in between the buildings. And then the actual matte painting, apart from sky, which were those buildings, also created in 3D, but ended up as 2D pictures, which I layered in 3D to create the illusion of 3D, because it's less heavy in compositing to create shot with just 2D planes of images from 3D, rather than creating it with the actual 3D models. And then since I got all of the layers and the matte painting in the 3D, I could create this fog with deep compositing to create the fog in between the buildings, and the end result looked like this with the buildings and the spaceship later. So yeah, that was a bit of my work from matte painting, and a bit of process for how it's done. But that's the end. Yes, so thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me.
Okay, thank you.
I'll put the camera on again.
Yes, so the question for this presentation is prepared by Mr. Philip Matlak, so please turn your camera and put your question.
Yeah, unfortunately my camera died before this presentation, so it will be offline. But my question for you is, how much time you commonly get for creating matte painting in production? Is it like set, or it depends on a shot?
It really depends on the shot. For example, in our studio, I do not do the matte painting myself, but our colleague does it. But he takes, well, usually it's days, but it's mostly because of the feedbacks. Because it depends, because you have to go with feedback from the director, from your supervisor, and you create a version, but then the version gets rejected because it's not up to director standards or whatever. So it's not really a question of time purely spent on drawing or painting. It's most of the time just time spent creating versions of the matte painting and getting to the point where your vision matches with the director's. But usually it takes days for simple shots and weeks maybe for complex cities and set extensions and whatever else is required. But it really depends, yes. And also it really depends on the director and budget and everything else. But yeah, most of the time the time required is minimal. to the time actually spent on creating versions and so on. So yeah, did I answer the question?
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
The next question will put the student of the first class of visual effects, Josef Plavuščák. Turn your camera, please.
Okay. Hello. I'd like to ask a question. What do you personally think about the legacy of matte paintings, digital matte paintings in the movie? Specifically, do you think it's gonna get replaced with AI or some kind of game engines used in the future?
Well, it's the thing you are mentioning, the replacement with AI and Unreal and so on. Well, basically, it's already happening, but it's not like the matte painting will end or will die because of it. It's just matte painting will get more tools to create the set extensions, the Unreal worlds, the sets, and the fantasy worlds. It's still a thing. It's just you have more tools to do it with. The AI, I have seen it, the NVIDIA AI, which creates paintings for you, is awesome, and it's still evolving, which is great. But it's not like you can give, or at least for now, it's not like you can give the AI your specifications or just send it the director's notes and the AI will create an amazing painting which you can freely put in your movie right away. It's not that, it doesn't work like that. You still have to make alterations to it, and you still need to the human touch for it to be compatible with the live shot. But no, I don't think it will replace it. I think it will add to it.